Hello, everyone. My name is Sahar Ahmed, and I am going to talk about everything I learned in English 3379. Well, not everything, because then we'd be here all night. I want to start by saying I thoroughly enjoyed the summer semester, and I'm happy I had such a great opportunity to learn so much from Professor Garrett and the guest speaker, Dr. Maida Jones. I'm going to start off by talking about Sankofa, which is a symbol of importance of learning from the past. The symbol that we discussed in class itself looks like a bird, like looking back and holding something in its mouth. It's about the present, looking back, and giving to the future, as we discussed in class. Like, in my own words, I think Sankofa is about looking back and understanding the past and, like, helping yourself move forward and, like, working on your future. Sankofa is something called an Adinkra symbol. Adinkra symbols originated in West Africa. And we touched base on this a little bit in class. And, it's a new term that I learned about like symbols in West Africa. Ghana specifically is where I think it originated from, like, as we talked about in class. And I think that was really interesting to learn about. And I think that Adinkra symbol of Sankofa was really beautiful. And I mean, after learning about it in class, was able to kind of think that I can pick it out in speeches. Like, for example, one of the speakers in John Lewis's eulogy, for John Lewis's eulogy, was talking about how John Lewis learned so much from his mentors, which I believe included, like, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And then they were talking about how he wanted to make sure he can, like, pass on what he learned. So I think that's an example of Sankofa. And I'm happy I learned, that new term, which was really interesting. But moving on from that, I learned about Frederick Douglass, specifically his speech titled "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," which was a really compelling speech. The quotes that stood out to me the most from that speech was when he wrote, and I'll quote. He spoke, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings with all your religious parade and solemnity are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour." So I thoroughly enjoyed reading that speech, because it was so strongly worded. It was so compelling, and he puts to the table all the hypocrisies of the 4th of July in regards to the slaves, like the black people during that time. And so I thought it was just very powerful and very incredible, his speech. And I'm going to go ahead and make a text to connection to Frederick Douglass's speech. I would argue that his speech can be related to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem. Douglass's speech and Kaepernick's gesture are very much so related, in that they argue that the rights and treatment of black people are not equal to their white counterparts. Kaepernick and Douglass are connected in a common goal or a common struggle. Maybe it could be argued that slavery has been abolished, since Douglas's time, but specifically the inequality of the inequality that Black people face today, in many ways, it kind of mirrors Douglas's speech. So I think that it's connected. He's protesting the 4th of July, and then Kaepernick is protesting standing during the national anthem. So it's kind of similar, I thought, at least, which is why I decided to mention it. In class, I learned about the poets Paul Laurence Dunbar, Phillis Wheatley, and Langston Hughes. And I am honestly so excited to one day incorporate these poets in my lesson plans when I have my glorious day as a leading teacher in the classroom. In the book Language, Discourse, and Power in African American Culture, I read Dunbar's poems We Wear the Mask and The Party. I also read Langston Hughes' poem Montage of a Dream Deferred, which is apparently sometimes called Harlem, and it's been my favorite poem piece so far. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it real fast. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it just explode? I really loved this poem. I really enjoyed reading it. I am definitely going to read more of his stuff because I really like this poem, and I look forward to buying a book of his and reading more. I learned about the tragic life of Phillis Wheatley in this class. Tragic because, obviously she was purchased into slavery as a young girl. I'm not sure exactly the age. I don't know if it was 7 or 8. And she was purchased and, stolen and taken away from her home, as, Professor Maida Jones was talking about as well during class. And, she was taken to, I'm not sure, to Boston it was. She was taken to Boston, and the Wheatley family purchased her because they wanted someone in their home to work for them. And she was kind of, I guess, small, and they framed, and she looked like she could do housework, so they purchased her, and they educated her and all of that. And while some people argue that she was educated and that was really great of them to do, I mean, in the end of the day, she was still a slave. She was still forced to be there. So it's tragic in that sense, but nonetheless, her life was remarkable because of the poetry that she was able to write as one of America's first Black poets. I think the first American Black woman poet. So it's remarkable that she was able to come out of that, that trauma and that situation, and then go on to achieve, her first published book, when she traveled to London and all of that. So it's remarkable in that sense. So I learned about her. And I definitely, like I said earlier, I can't wait to incorporate Phillis Wheatley's work, Langston Hughes' work, and Dunbar's work to my lesson plans one day. The thing I want to talk about now, the last thing I want to talk about now, is the middle passage, specifically Tom Feelings' video. His video taught me more about the middle passage than anything I've ever read in a book. And I think that video is something that I will remember and take with me after this class. When I'm ever teaching a book about slavery, chattel slavery, the middle passage, I definitely will show that video because it was the most informative thing that I've watched about the middle passage. To sum everything up, this course taught me that African and African American literature is extensive and rich. I want to argue that I formed the opinion after this class that African and African American literature should be more incorporated, specifically African American literature, should be more incorporated in schools and colleges. And I plan to do this in the future. It's interesting that the curriculum in schools often choose to require British books and plays be read, and the work of like white American authors and poets be a requirement. And I'm just talking from my personal experience. And I've been to four different high schools because I was moving a lot, and I've never had this kind of exposure. I mean, obviously this is an African American literature course, but still, it made me think that was odd. Um, that's not to say that the work of British playwrights and white American authors aren't important, but I think it's about time we see more of the Black perspective in schools. Um, I was honestly surprised about how much I did not know about African American culture and African American writers and poets. And so I think that that's something that has to change. Like Mahatma Gandhi once said, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. So I plan on being a lifelong learner of African and African American literature, and I appreciate all the resources that we had in class, all the different lists of books. I've like taken pictures of all of that, and I can't wait to put that in my school, my class library, and have that available. Thank you for a wonderful semester, Professor Garrett. I enjoyed every minute of this class. Thank you so much for this great opportunity of being in your class, and it was a pleasure and privilege to be a student in your class. Thank you so much.